I told my husband my new acting gig was legit, but when he discovered the filthy truth behind it, he destroyed me in front of everyone without batting an eye. My name is Bella, and a year ago I chose an acting role over my marriage. Even now, saying it feels like admitting I stepped on my own life and kept walking. I've always dreamt of being an actress. At first, being famous in a glamorous way didn't matter to me. I just wanted to be seen and recognized for my talent and passion. Just enough that my name would roll by in the credits and I'd know I wasn't invisible. When I was younger, I used to carry a small notebook everywhere. I filled it with monologues from movies, messy scribbles of scenes I loved, and little lines I practiced in front of mirrors. Some people around me said it was silly, but it was the only thing that made me feel alive. I watched behind-the-scenes clips more than the actual movies, and I memorized interviews like they were scriptures. I even treated acting like some people treat religion, but every time I auditioned, something went wrong. Sometimes they said I looked too ordinary, and sometimes they said I was great, but not the right fit. Other times they promised to call, but never did. I tried everything people said would help. I took unpaid background roles and got cut from scenes that never aired. I volunteered as a crew on small projects hoping someone would notice me. I acted in student films that never got edited, and I also enrolled in workshops that drained my savings. I even worked at a theater, cleaning spilled popcorn because I thought being close to movies was better than nothing. But still, nothing came out of it, not even a sliver of progress. Eventually, I reached a point where I felt like I was dissolving. For me, it was like if my passion couldn't survive, then neither could I. I was sad all the time, and the kind of sadness that I felt sat in the chest like a brick. Every day I told myself to quit, then hated myself for even thinking about it. It felt like failure was tattooed onto my skin, and I was a human definition of bad luck, and life was not programmed to favor me. One evening, after a particularly awful audition, I walked out of the building feeling hollow. I didn't care where I was going. My eyes were blurry, and I kept wiping my face, trying not to cry, but failing. I wandered into the street without looking, and a car slammed its brakes just inches from my legs. The driver cursed at me, but I kept walking. I didn't even care. There was absolutely nothing to care about at that point. Then, someone behind me grabbed my arm and pulled me back to the sidewalk. He said I shouldn't cry anymore, and I answered that I didn't know how to stop. He asked what happened, and I told him that my life was pathetic, that all I ever wanted was one break, just one sign the universe wasn't mocking me. I told him I felt like a waste of space, that if I couldn't even fuel my passion, then there was nothing left of me. He didn't treat me like I was dramatic or crazy. Instead, he said people who keep trying after failing 100 times are braver than anyone who succeeded after just one try. I answered that bravery didn't pay bills or fix a broken heart. He said pain didn't mean I was done, and I answered that maybe I already was. We didn't exchange numbers that day. We only told each other our names. He said his name is Dave. But then, we ran into each other again the next week at a grocery store I never even visited before. He laughed and said maybe life wasn't completely against me, and I answered that maybe he was right. We started talking more. We met for coffee. Then he said he loved how passionate I was, and I answered that I wasn't sure I deserved to be loved for something that only brought me heartbreak. He said I deserved everything good, and I answered that he made it easy to believe. That's how we started dating. He steadied my life without even trying. 6 years ago, we got married and we built something real, something that was quiet, cool, comforting, and ordinary in the best way. And it helped me forget acting for a while. But dreams don't die just because life gets better. And a year ago, one desperate choice destroyed everything I built with the man who once saved me from stepping in front of a moving car. I destroyed us with my own hands, all in the name of the dream I could never let go of. 2 years into my marriage, everything seemed okay on the surface. Dave was wealthy enough that I didn't need to work. I didn't even try to force myself into anything else, because acting was the only thing that ever made me feel alive. And the truth was, it hadn't worked out yet. Some days, I wondered if I was just wasting time, watching series or films, thinking, I could do that, and I could be that, and then quietly convincing myself I wasn't. Dave never let me sink too deep into that thought. Whenever I mentioned wanting to try more roles or even just practice a scene, he'd nod and was genuinely excited, saying I should keep going. He always reminded me that the world wasn't ready for me yet, but I would get there. Eventually, a small break came, a minor role in a low-budget indie film. It wasn't glamorous, and no one outside a tiny circle of film festivals would ever see it, but it mattered to me. That one small role sparked something inside me again. My confidence surged, and with it came ambition. I wanted to aim higher, to be noticed, to shine, to become famous. So for a while, I poured every bit of myself into acting again. Auditions, rehearsals, workshops, anything that could inch me closer to being someone recognized. For years, though, it was always the same pattern. The small roles that were unnoticed and overlooked. That's the only thing I got. I comforted myself with the fact that it was an experience and that one day it would pay off. But slowly, hope dwindled. The auditions stopped calling. Roles went to younger faces and more connected people or someone else. I felt like I was fading, like my talent had a clock and mine was already expired. I cried, complained, and obsessively replayed my failures in my head. Dave was patient for a while, but I could feel him pulling back, and perhaps not even consciously. He wanted to help, but my frustration had become exhausting. Then one evening, he said something that should have been comforting, but instead hit me like a bullet. He said maybe acting just wasn't my path anymore. He meant it kindly, I knew he did. He was trying to be realistic, trying to protect me from disappointment. But at that moment, it felt like a wall had risen between us, and for the first time, I didn't see him as my partner. I saw him as someone standing squarely in the way of my life, the life I had been dreaming about since I was a child. Rage boiled inside me, and I screamed and wanted to storm out, but he tried to calm me. Then he said he was only trying to remind me that I was smart and could do anything I wanted in the world. I answered that maybe intelligence couldn't give me what talent and timing had failed to deliver, but he didn't argue or push anymore. He just let me sit there seething. That night, lying in bed, I made a decision. I was going to prove him wrong. Acting wasn't over for me. I was meant for this, and I would show it. I would fight harder, push further, and refuse to give up. A few weeks later, I came across a notice online for an audition that looked different. It wasn't one of the usual casting calls on the big sites, and it wasn't connected to any studio I had heard of. The posting was for a small independent film. The character description was specific and layered, like the kind of role that could make someone take notice if done well. It promised that the actress would be fully immersed in the role, and that the part could involve real and raw emotional scenes. I stared at it for a long time. It was exactly the kind of challenge I had been craving. It was small, yes, but it was a step, and I needed a step. I spent that night rehearsing, reading the lines aloud in my apartment until my voice hurt, and imagining how the camera would catch my expressions. Dave noticed me practicing and encouraged me quietly, saying he believed I could do it. But in that same breath, I felt a tension I couldn't push aside, like a strange fusion of excitement, fear, and defiance. This role wasn't just another audition, but more like the door back into the life I had always wanted. The next morning, I went to the audition. My heart was pounding and my hands were trembling, but I didn't hesitate. I walked into the room fully ready to give everything I had. That moment, that small decision to step forward again, felt like the first real choice I had made for myself in months. I knew it was risky, that the pay was modest, and that no one outside the room might ever notice me, but it didn't matter. I had decided to fight. I had decided to be seen. I was asked to audition as a woman who confronted her cheating husband after finding out about his affairs. I brought my A game. We were free to deliver whatever version of the woman we saw fit, and I went with a heartbroken woman who was trying to hide behind a tough demeanor so she wouldn't give her husband the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Everyone in the room gave me a standing ovation when I was done, and I didn't think it needed to be said, but it was clear I had gotten the role. I talked to the director, and he said that I was exactly the kind of support the movie needed to head in the right direction. We talked, and I signed a few papers, and we were ready to get underway. I went home in a hurry when I was done with the producers and director. I couldn't wait to tell Dave the news. He didn't even need to ask me anything, and I didn't need to say anything. I hurried through the door with so much excitement, and he just knew. He caught me, threw me in the air, and gave me a big hug. I then kept saying that I got it. He was really happy for me. He was so happy that he opened a bottle of wine he had been keeping for his father's 65th birthday. We danced that night like the world belonged to just the two of us. Shooting was to start in about 1 month, and I was all set. The director had sent me a copy of the script, and I was reading it to understand the character I was portraying completely. And I must say, that script was what I would call a fountain, because it kept getting me wet. It was a raunchy movie, like a seriously steamy movie. While reading, I was curious about who they had cast as the male lead, and I got a chance to see the guy during the first table reading. When I got there, we all took our seats. Everyone was present. Every actor that had a role with lines in the movie, the director and producers were also present. The names of each character were placed on the tables in front of seats, so the actors portraying the characters would sit behind the names. I was seated behind my character's name, Liana Darling, the female lead, and I was curious about the guy taking the role of Byron Atwell, the male lead. The seat of the character was empty up until the moment the director said that we would start without him. That was when he walked in. I just knew it was him immediately I saw him walking in. He was fit, tall, and drop-dead gorgeous. Every single female in the room couldn't take their eyes off him. Even the guys couldn't help it. He was like a living demigod, and he made his way to the seat beside me. Yeah, our seats were side by side because we were the two main leads. I felt my heart beating so fast, and I didn't even know why. He was still steps away when I caught wind of his perfume. It was intoxicating. It was like a spell that would literally sweep you off your feet and smack you to the floor, taking away your consciousness. When he sat down, he looked at me and smiled. I smiled back, but I think my smile was so crooked because I was still in shock at just how shocked I was. I felt like I wasn't in control of my jaws any longer. He looked at me for a few seconds and said, "Hey, partner." It made me blush, and I answered with hey as well. The director then said, "Thank you, Jethro, for finally joining us," and everyone laughed at the comment. Jethro then said that he likes to make an entrance, and that made everyone even laugh harder. This guy was more charismatic than the flowers in the wind. I don't know how that was possible. Throughout the time we were doing the reading, I was so scared to look in his eyes because I was shy. It was messing up my reading, especially when it was a scene with me and him. I found it difficult to reply. The words were right there in front of me, but I couldn't utter them. I would stutter and sometimes even choke. It was bad and embarrassing, and I couldn't believe how terrible I was. What's funny is that once the reading ended, Jethro left immediately. He just gave me a wink, told me that it was nice to meet me, and called me Choke Queen. It sounded like playful banter, but I felt so freaking embarrassed that I buried my face in the table as he walked away. The director called me after the reading, and I already knew that it wasn't going to be a pretty conversation. He pulled me aside and asked me what that horrendous bullshit I was doing during the reading was called. He said all I had to do was look at the script and read from it, and yet I was flustered like a dog with his dick cut off. Yeah, the director makes use of a lot of sexual innuendo. I apologized for my lack of professionalism and promised that it won't happen again. He said he'd rather put his hand between a closing door hinge than let it happen again. He asked me for my phone, and I didn't even bother asking what he wanted it for. I was that scared of losing the role that I got after God knows how many failed trials. I handed him the phone, and he pulled his phone out from his pocket. He dialed a number into my phone while looking at his phone. He then gave me my phone back, saying that he had put in Jethro's number. He asked me to call him as soon as possible and set up meetups with him. He said he wanted us to get acquainted and build some chemistry before we started shooting. In his words, he didn't want me looking lost in the camera when shooting started. It was actually a good idea. He gave me a card, saying that our meetups would be funded by the movie company. I thought that was massively generous. He then held my arm and said that he was giving me the card because he had more confidence in my budgeting skills than he had in Jethro's. So I took the card and went home. I kept thinking of calling Jethro, but I couldn't. I was terrified, feeling like a high school girl again. I paced around my living room while thinking about how I could make a simple phone call. When my husband came home to see me, he asked what was wrong, and I told him that I messed up during the table reading, and now I'm too scared to correct it by making a simple phone call. He could see that I was panicking, so he held my shoulders and asked me to breathe with him. We took deep breaths until I was relaxed. Then he told me that I had wanted this for as long as he had known me, so I shouldn't let fear hinder me from achieving it. He was right. Yeah, he was. so I took a really deep breath and told him that I'd do what's necessary. I took my phone and dialed the number. Deep down, I prayed he wouldn't pick up the phone, so I wouldn't have to go through whatever embarrassing conversation that would happen when he picked up the phone. But he actually answered the call. My husband gave me a thumbs up, mouthing that I should go on. I cleared my throat and asked if I was on to Jethro. When he confirmed it, I introduced myself, and when he knew who I was, he immediately shouted "Choker Queen." I communicated the message from the director, saying that we needed to hang out. He was silent for a bit, and that honestly got me worried, because I didn't know what to expect anymore. All of a sudden, he then said that he would love to get acquainted with me. He then told me to text him the time and place and ended the call. I was so happy that it went well that I wasn't even worried about how rudely he ended the call. I was just happy that part was over. My husband, who had been looking at me the whole time, then asked me if I wasn't still breathing. I laughed because he was right. Just a moment ago, I was acting like Jethro was the dark angel of death, and me speaking to him would put me at risk of being taken down to hell. My husband went to take his clothes off while I went to get him something to eat, but I couldn't help but think about where I was going to take Jethro to. He seemed like the classy kind of guy, and I didn't want to give him another bad first impression, so I needed to up my game. While we ate that night, I asked my husband for suggestions, and he told me to take Jethro to a fast food spot. I was so shocked by that recommendation that I almost physically threw up. He laughed at my reaction, but he said he was just trying to be budget-friendly. I told him that the director gave me a card to spend from. He then laughed and said I should have started with that, so suggested another restaurant. I checked them out on Google, and yeah, they were more elevated than a fast food restaurant, but their prices weren't unreasonable as well. I texted Jethro the address and the time he was supposed to meet me up the next day. My husband left the house early the next morning for work, and when I got up, the first thing that came to my mind was what I'd wear to the meetup. It took quite some time, but I was able to come up with something. I got to the restaurant first, and I had to wait for Jethro for about 14 minutes. And when he arrived, he looked slightly drunk. I asked him if he was hungover, and he laughed, saying that he was hungry. I ordered some food, and as he was eating, he asked me what my name was. The question wasn't one I had realized was even necessary, because I really thought he knew my name. That was when I remembered that I was just a lowly nobody, so it wasn't possible for him to know my name. I told him my name, and he then asked me if I even knew the kind of movie I signed up to make. I didn't really know why he would ask me such a question when we clearly did a table reading together. I nodded and asked him why he asked that, and his reply was that I just looked too nice for the role I was portraying. I mean, I have been called many things, but too nice looking wasn't one I had ever been called, and I didn't particularly take it as a compliment. I told him that I had read the script, so I knew what I was getting myself into, and that the job of an actor is to take on a role and make people believe that he or she is that person in the role. I told him I'm good at my job, so he didn't need to worry, that when the time came, my nice shell would fall off. He was right, though. I had landed a role in a raw, intimate drama about forbidden relationships. I had never been the lead in a movie. Hell, I had never been the center of attention on a movie set with all the cameras pointed at me and everyone staring at me. So to do that for the first time, while being naked and intimate with someone else, would be very frightening. I mean, sure, it's not a porno. Not exactly. It's an actual movie with a lot of sex scenes. Jethro leaned forward and asked me if I had ever even kissed before. I found the question insulting. He was basically looking at me like the little puppy who had never left her person's house. I showed him my wedding ring to show that I was married. So, yeah, I have kissed and I have been intimate. He leaned forward with an annoying smile and said that my story was getting a lot more interesting. He asked me if my husband knew the kind of movie I was doing. And in truth, he didn't actually know, but I didn't want to say that, so I lied. I said he knew and that he was very supportive of me. I said he was my biggest fan. I don't think he believed me, because he then asked me if I knew that the intimacy was real. Like the sex scenes are unsimulated. In the director's words, European realism. I knew exactly what it all meant, but to be honest, I didn't know that we were actually going to be having sex. I thought we would just lay naked and make it seem like we were actually having sex when we weren't. I hesitated for a few seconds before I opened my mouth to answer. I told him that I was aware of all that, and I was ready to rise up to the task, but the question was if he would be able to keep up with me. I was thinking about my almost career, my almost fame, my almost life, everything that I almost had but never did because I was never recognized, never picked. Well, now I had been picked and I wasn't going to waste that opportunity. I was welcoming that possibility with everything in me. But nothing could have prepared me for what came next. Jethro said I should prove it. He wanted me to prove that I was actually more than ready to commit to the role, and when I asked him how, he said I should follow him to the restroom and give him a blowjob. He was ripping a scene straight from the movie script. I was taken by surprise. I didn't know what to say. He said that we were going to have a lot of sex during the movie shooting. He stated that some of the scenes we'd have, the director might be unhappy with the result. He was right. I've been around the movie industry to know that reshoots happen a lot. He even went on to mention all the places that our characters will be having sex. A restaurant restroom, a hotel balcony, hotel room, bedroom, staircase of an apartment, in a car, in an alley, and even on a rooftop. And that's not even all of it. I told him that I wasn't going to have sex with him in the restroom of a restaurant. He laughed and said that he can already see the first day of shooting, that there will be a lot of reshoots because of how awkward I'll be. So this was his way of saying that we should rehearse for shooting. I waited for a few seconds, thinking about it. If I turned him down, he might tell the director that I am not a good fit for the role. And besides, I came here to shake off every awkward feeling that might persist before we start shooting. So why don't we do just that? I took a deep breath and convinced myself it's for the art. But deep down, I knew it was for my ego. I smiled, jumping into character. Then I said he should show me what he's got. I got up and walked towards the restroom, and he quickly drank a glass of water and followed me. I sucked him off in the bathroom, and he ended up pounding me as well. I must say that sex made it to my Mount Rushmore of sex moments. It was everything and more. When my husband came home that night and asked me how the meetup went, I told him that it was wonderful. When I went for the next table reading, I saw Jethro was there before me. He leaned over to me and said that he was just joking when he called me the choker queen during the first table reading because of how I kept pausing, stuttering, and coughing while reading. He said he didn't know how good of a choker I actually was. He told me that he could feel my Adam's apple touching his cap. That's how deep he went. I laughed at his compliment and asked him if I was still too nice in his eyes. He chuckled, and the table reading went on as planned. This time, as we read our scenes, there was so much tension between us that I felt like reaching to the side and grabbing his bulge. I could see from the side of my eye that he had an erection, and I just wanted to ride it, but I couldn't because we were with people. After the reading, the director came to us and said that he doesn't know what happened at that meetup, but he was glad he suggested it, and that was the kind of energy he wanted to see when we started shooting. Jethro and I met up a few more times, trying to recreate the scenes from the script in real life, so we would get acquainted before he actually started shooting. Or at least that's the excuse I told myself when, in fact, I just loved the thrill of having sex in places that people can just walk in on us. And I was enjoying the taste of variety. Because if I'm being honest, it made me so crazy how I could have Jethro in the day, and when I went home, I could have my husband. It was exhilarating. When the first day of shooting came, my husband wanted to come with me to the movie set. I didn't know how to tell him that there was no way in hell that I could let him come watch me fucking another man on the staircase of an apartment. Well, technically the stairs were built on set, but still, you get my point. He wanted to come support me, and that was sweet of him, but hell no. He said something about how it made him so emotional that after all these years, I am finally getting my breakthrough in the movie-making business. I didn't know what to say. I just kept smiling and saying that the universe works in funny ways. I then made an excuse that if I saw him there, I wouldn't be able to concentrate and read my lines, and I'd be messing up a lot. He laughed and said that I was still a very shy person, and that it was a miracle that I could perform as an actor. Well, thankfully, I was able to avert that disaster because I don't know how I would have done things with him there. I went to set, and we soon began shooting our first scene. It went wonderfully. The director loved every bit of it. And for the next 2 weeks, we were shooting basically every day. I always imagined living that life, and I was finally living it. Production was going smoothly, and yeah, Jethro and I were basically banging like rabbits on set. It was breathtaking. One day on set, when we finished one scene, the director told me to meet him in his office at the end of the day. I was really curious what this was about because I couldn't possibly think of a reason why he would want to see me. Anyways, we moved on to the next scene. It was a hotel balcony scene. So we were shooting on an elevated space. It was made to look like a balcony, and we were already going at it right there. Jethro was pulling my hair and my face was in camera, showing every shred of emotion. And that was when a group of people walked in with some boxes of food and snacks. Jethro and I kept going because we didn't want to break the scene and have to redo the entire thing. I thought the director had ordered some food for the cast and crew, but all of a sudden I heard my name, and that's when I stopped. I tried to look past the lighting, but it was difficult. They hastened their steps and forward, and I saw my family. My husband, my parents, my husband's mother, some of our siblings, and a few friends. They had come to surprise me on set with food for the entire cast and crew. It was supposed to be a sweet gesture, but I guess that turned sour. I didn't even know what to do. Jethro was still inside me. My husband then asked if this was the reason I didn't let him come on set the first day. He couldn't believe it. Tears started rolling down his eyes, and I tried to talk, but I didn't even know what to say. He told me that if this was the life I wanted to lead, then I can do it alone, because he cannot be acquainted with a whore like me. While talking, he pulled out his ring and dropped it on the floor. He turned to walk away, and that was when I called him, begging him to wait. Jethro leaned closer to me and said, "So you lied when you said he knew." I elbowed his face and shifted from him, making his slip out of me. My mother, who saw this, suddenly dropped to the floor and fainted. Jethro was bleeding from his nose. My mother was unconscious, and I think my father was having a mild heart attack. Or was it a panic attack? I can't remember, but it was pure chaos on set. Ambulances were called. My mom had to be taken to the hospital, along with my dad. Jethro was taken as well. My siblings, my husband's siblings, they all looked at me like I was a spit on their image. My husband, who made sure my parents went in their ambulance and asked 2 of my siblings to follow them, was now on his way to his car. I ran after him, naked. I knelt on the floor, pleading with him, telling him to try and understand me because I couldn't live without him. He turned to me and said that I should have thought about that before I went ahead and threw my life away. He said he will never forgive me, and that he curses the day we met. He added that he should have just let me walk into that car, because at least I would have died without embarrassing my family the way I have. I was speechless. He said he never wanted to see me again, and as he spoke, he cried. He said I broke his heart, and he hated me for what I have done to us. He got into his car and drove off. I watched as his mother and siblings and my siblings that were still left slowly walked to their cars and left. None of them would speak to me, no matter how much I begged and cried. I walked back inside to get dressed, and the director called me to the side. He was furious that I injured Jethro. I told him that Jethro was making fun of me in the situation that unfolded, but he didn't care. He then lowered his head and said that when I walked in the morning, he didn't know how to tell me this because he felt bad about how much work I had put into the movie. But with everything that just happened, he thinks it's for the best. I asked him what he was talking about, and he opened his bag and pulled out an envelope and handed it to me. It was my pay for the full job, which didn't make any sense to me. We were not even halfway done with shooting, so why was I getting paid in full? That's when he told me that the studio was able to secure a popular actress to finish the rest of the movie. I was speechless. He said she will reshoot my normal scenes, and for my sex scenes, they'll just put her face on mine. I couldn't believe it. All of my hard work, all my sacrifice, all for nothing. I collapsed on the floor right there. Update. It's been a few weeks now, and my goodness, a lot has happened. I wish you could see me right now. I am completely lost in the forest of depression. My husband threw me out of the house, divorced me. Jethro sued me for assault, and I honestly think that's the most annoying part. It's not my fault he doesn't know how to read the room and shut the hell up. And my family won't even talk to me anymore. My eldest brother says I almost killed both our parents in one go, so I needed to keep my distance. And I think the worst of it all, I guess, is that I now realize that I have actually been jobless all this time. I had not worked because I kept trying to pursue a dream that didn't want me. No job history, no savings, and now I am on the verge of collapse.